and welcome to LIGHTBOB TV, episode 6, Wednesday. And today we're going to talk about manufacturing reality behind the smart fixtures. This week was dedicated to everything that the electronics, the smart. Yesterday we talked about fixtures, intelligence, and today we're going to go up a little bit, and we're going to start talking about the manufacturers. Um, smart fixtures promise smart smart fixtures promise intelligence, and the manufacturers are the one that are determined whether the intelligence survive or not. And the reason why I'm saying this is because um, it's easy to say we're going to go with that flow, but at a certain point, you have to follow with all this intelligence and then all this electronic and everything. And if you started as a traditional manufacturers and you're manufacturing traditional fixtures, there's way more than just putting a smart device into a box. So between the concept and the installation, there is a big gap. And for us, the designer, we never see that. And this is not something that we care about or we need to understand, but it's important to understand the effect that will have on us. And beside seeing a very nice and clean and a beautiful spec sheet, there is a whole ecosystem, and I love to use that word because that's true. It is. There's a whole system and there's a whole world around the fixtures, and this world has not only the good part of collecting the money, but it has all the constraint, all the cost pressure. Because every time we had a device, or every time we change, or every time we modify, or every time we upgrade, there is cost added to that. And today's, with our supply chain viability, it becomes harder and harder because, as we saw in the past few years, not many products are manufactured here, or in wherever you have your manufacturing plant, you're depending on a international supply chain. And this can be sometimes a problem because the component that you need may not be available. They may be had a surtax. They may add the customs. You may have had a container that fell in the ocean, and then you have to wait another 6 months or 3 months to get the material. So the promise of a fixture and the reality how it's built is totally two different worlds. And this is what I wanted to talk about today, because I've been on both sides. I've been on the side that, oh my God, I want that fixtures. I love this. I want to put this on my project. It's going to be. And then I've been on the other side where we had to produce some fixtures. We had a specific bulb in that we were specifying, and we couldn't get the sockets. And then when we received the sockets, and it was a large quantity, they came from Europe, and that particular socket didn't have an approval. So we had to go to a whole bunch of loops and hoops to get it approved, and then finally, after we passed the delay way over, we got it approved, and then we got our fixture out. But all of this now, it become way more complicated because we're not talking about a socket. We're talking about a device that is composed of many, many, many different little components. And one key component out, the whole circuit is useless. So you may have an order for 10,000 and they have 500 in stock. The only thing you're going to have is 500. And the thing is that also is that the chip manufacturer or the component manufacturer in that case may be upgrading some feature on it, because if they're gonna do, they want to be cutting edge, they want to get the latest and the greatest, they want to open the market, they may be adding some features. So now you have more feature than you need, so you're paying for something that's way over designed or way over qualified for what you need, but that's the only parts that's available. And that makes the electronic becoming more and more complex, because now you're going to go into a revision, you're going to have to go through a different approval, and you're going to make sure that that part is delivering the same way that the other parts are delivering. So this whole system that you're building with these fixtures, now it becomes way more complicated, and you have to adapt to all these component change, which makes the product cycle getting shorter. Before, as I was telling you yesterday, we had a lamp, and the A lamp lasted for 100 years almost. There was not much change. So the product, you would design a fixture, it would be there forever, and they still exist. Now, if you're designing something with a chip from 3 years ago or 5 years ago, it's probably obsolete, because there's a new chip that came that is way smaller, way faster, that have all the protocol and all the feature that you want, plus, and it's cheaper. So how are you going to handle that? Because the chip may be cheaper, but the redesign of the whole product, the approval of it, and the way that it's going to be fit into the fixture, and all the testing has not been done. So as you see, all this add pressure to the manufacturer. So we're asking more from the fixtures, and we're giving less and less room to the manufacturer to deliver. And that's what's happening right now, is that some fixture manufacturers are just like, okay, let's call it a quit, because we don't want to get into that spiral. We're not going to win anything. Some big one, they don't care. It's just part of a balance sheet, plus minus. It's just they're set up for it. So that cuts out a lot of creativity, a lot of creative stuff. But I guess that's the name. Before we had we had fixture. The way we treat a fixture was very simple. It was just an assembly. We had electronics, we had optics, we had a little bit of thermal management, we had a little firmware and some connectivity, and that's it. Now, manufacturers are, with smart fixtures, have way more than that, because now we have way more sensor. We can monitor the temperature. We can monitor the current on the board. We can do, there's a ton of feature that we can do, and it requires that the fixtures also is done for that. And what does that do is that now we also need a software to control that fixture. So not only now we're dealing with a physical piece of material, but we have to have a component, a software component, to control it. And what we used to see is almost gone. Uh, More and more we see fixtures that are cutting edge, that have more and more electronic, they have more and more equipment in it, and they require more and more. How could I say that? More and more testing. We have, the heat dissipation. Before we had the heat component was mostly on the LED, but now since the board takes some of the the charge and add some feature, it also generates some heat. Now, where do we place that driver in the fixture now becomes strategic. The component capability, right? We talked about that the whole week. How a driver has to be compatible with some LED and so forth. And before, um, we only had to worry about one type of wiring. That was from the socket to the outlet. Now we have all kinds of wiring. The wiring that goes from the board to the LED, from the board to the power supply, from etc. etc. So we also have to not only manage all the component but the wiring too. And again, when we were talking about the chain, the supply chain, something like a little terminal on a wire that has nothing to do with the fixture uh, life, or the fixture driver or the LED, now is slowing down our delivery because we forgot to order, or that part is not. So adding more component to a lighting fixtures makes it way more complicated and has a longer path, and needs way more logistic than before. Now, the market, what does the market want? They want faster product launch. So what do we want? Why do we want faster product launch? Because we wanna sell more product. We want to be able to uh, be different from our competitor. We want to have more exclusivity. We want to have more everything. So that's all nice, but what does that do to our manufacturer? Well, some of the direct, impact is that now they have less time to validate, less time to test, right? And they have to introduce product that are maybe, not 100% ready for the market and 100% ready. So the innovation, even if it moves fast, needs time to establish the reliability, the reliability. Why? Because if you buy a product and let's say it's defective, or you have a batch that's defective, what's going to happen? You're going to have bad reputation. People are not going to buy, etc., etc. So when we start thinking about smart fixtures and smart device, because it's not only the fixtures that manufacturers deal with. Sometimes they have to deal with switches. Sometimes they have to deal with control. So we have all these parts. We have the chips, we have the drivers, we have the boards, we have the sensor, and every one of them, uh, every one of these little parts can change. Any of these parts can be substitute or delayed. So again, we have two fixtures that comes from the same company, maybe 6 months. They don't behave the same. They don't control the same. They don't act the same. Why? Because exactly what I was telling you is that we may had maybe we were in the middle of one batch, and now we have the other batch coming in, and there was an upgrade or a change, or and the consistency didn't didn't stay there. So as a manufacturer, we have to deliver, and we're not going to test every product, but it does happen that these kind of things happen. And now, what can happen? Because people are ask me, yeah, but it's well, you can have a lot of problems with your dimming. Could be totally inconsistent. Like with one dimmer it work, with the other one it doesn't work. Same kind of fixtures. You can have also some communication dropout, meaning that you're sending a signal, one fixture respond, the other doesn't respond right away. You can have also some flicker under certain condition. Well, you the AC, you have another Wi-Fi, something, suddenly one of the lights start to act crazy. So all these little problems are comes, and as a designer, it we don't have a clue where they come from. We don't know. We're not part of the magic secret and the secret recipe. So sometimes the what I found is that the technology work in isolation. So you have people that are working in a certain silo. They're developing a product and they're really good at it. But the problem comes when you start integrating that product with the others. They're really good by themselves. And then suddenly you want to put it into a smart controller, and then they don't like it. So what's happening is that you, as a designer, you have to kind of deal with that, and sometimes it's easy, sometimes it's not easy. Sometimes it's the compatibility between the two products, right? And we don't know. I mean, sometimes we know, sometimes we don't know, because we sometimes you have the experience, right? Sometimes it will also be a software problem. So the one software is not updated, and well, it happens. You don't update your software, well, that's it, or your firmware. The one that's on the product. Sometimes you'll have some electronic that is aging very fast. So some of the components, yesterday we were talking about capacitor dry out. What do? One little capacitor can pop, and the whole product does stop working. And most of the time also you will find somewhere that there is a heat management that it's not managed properly, that somebody didn't really see or understand or did his proper testing or added a part. So it's always something. It always comes from a small mistake. It's not a big mistake. It's very rare that the whole fixture, you plug it in and it start, like a firework. Very, very rare. But it happened. But most of the time, it's something, a little mismatch across a product or a system or a component, and boom, your product doesn't work. Wow, this is very intense. And before, we didn't have to worry about any of that. Before, we would have a spec sheet, we would read it, and it was we the consistency was there, and we could easily compare two fixtures together, because basically what we were comparing was the source. And then let's say we had a project, we had a specific type of ballast. Well, if we were specifying, uh, this type of ballast, well, we knew that both fixture would have the same ballast. Both fixtures sometimes would be compatible with the ballast, would be compatible with the bulb, and so that would be easy. And then it would come down to, well, how does it make, how fast can we get it, and how cheap do we get it? And that was about the 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 end of a spec. Today, the reality is different. We have to ask deeper questions. We have to understand what the manufacturers are doing. We have to evaluate reliability, not just feature. We have to think about the system, the whole system that the lighting is going to be in, not just the product. Because the product, like we said, we can plug it in the wall, it works. Now we plug 100 of them and we put them in a ceiling that has all kinds of wiring and metals and this and that, and then suddenly fixtures start to act crazy. All of this is our new reality. And when you do a design, and when you do a spec, and when you have a beautiful presentation, when you have a tabletop presentation, when you have a 15 minutes pitch from a salesperson, this is the kind of thing you have to understand now. You have to understand that, there is more than this 15 minute to make a judgment. And also, you want to try it. You want to see some case study. You want to see places. You want to talk to people. You want to, have a testimonial. All of this because this is how the business is conducted now, right? It's not only on the brand reputation. It's not only on the warranty, the maintenance costs. If the client been working 25 years, 100 years with that manufacturers, it's all nice. But as a designer, you gotta insist, and you gotta start thinking about what you're doing and the result that's gonna happen because of the decision you're taking. So basically, smart lighting is not just about what it can do, right? It's also what it will keep doing when you're not there, and after a year, after 2 years, after 5 years. Like right now, the system works, everything works. How do you maintain this into time? And this is where most people fail, because they don't ask these hard questions. And don't forget that not having the answer is makes you guilty. If somebody doesn't answer to you, and you still go on and you specify that product, you're responsible for it. So it is important that you get the answer. It is important that you make sure that what you're specifying is very important. And most of all, it's important that the manufacturer you're working with can deliver what they promise. Because after that, there's nothing else you can do. And like I said before, when the trouble hit the fan, it's not pretty, right? So how do you evaluate a manufacturer for their smart lighting competence or capability? Well, again, we talked about a lot of that on Monday. Like the different team they have in house, the different suppliers they're working with, the name brand of component they're using, and all of these things are very, very important. And also, what the manufacturer itself is putting up front. Like, what are they investing in R&D? What are they want to do? What kind of team they have, and who they respond to, and also what have they done? Because even though the past doesn't equal the future, if you have a manufacturer that stand by you because there was a failure on a fixture in the past or on a series of fixtures, well, you can be sure that they are doing the same. And in a new unit of time, it's never bad to ask what you're going to do if I have 25 fixtures that blow up or that stop working or I become deficient. What's the worst case scenario that can happen, and how are you going to solve that? And those are questions that you'll be surprised, and they will be surprised too, because nobody's asking these questions. Nobody wants to know about you know what's happening and what's going to be in the future. They want to know, okay, do you have an order? Yes. And how can we fulfill it? Yes. And when, and so forth. But your game and your head is on the log. And if something goes wrong, you'll be the first one point at. They don't, because you're the one who's supposed to have the information. So yeah, today is a small episode, um, and I was thinking about that because when I started thinking about this episode, I thought about the manufacturer, and I said, well, again, I talked a lot about the past 2 days about the electronics and all the components and the system and the software and who does what, and I just wanted to make sure that the manufacturers also are a part of this, because sometimes we think it's all about the parts, or it's all about the technology, or it's a teamwork, and being there and helping and knowing and being in communication with your manufacturer uh, is always will always help you, because if there is something and you're in communication, there's no secret. You can give an answer, and the people in front of you won't have won't have to invent an answer. If you say, well, the problem is because we have parts that are back order, well, at least they know there's a part that are back order. If you don't tell them anything, they can think a lot of things. They can think that they're closing. They can think that they don't want to do this, or there's a more important client, or whatever they think. There will be a vacuum. Your job is to make sure that you're in communication with your manufacturer, so your client and specifically the installer or the contractor knows what to do, so they can organize their work accordingly. So the idea is not to disconnect from technology. The idea is not to change our spec, or to look for just certain type of manufacturer, but the idea is just to start understanding a little bit beyond what the products are, and what else you have to take care of or to think about, so that your lighting system does what you want it to do. And 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 it doesn't matter the size of the project, that you're doing a small project or a very, very large scale project. There will be all kinds of communication that you're going to receive, and you're going to share about the evolution of the product. And it's important to always be part of it, and keep everybody in the loop, aware of what's going on. So thank you very much for joining me today. I'll see you tomorrow, and tomorrow is design day, so that's going to be fun. And yeah, so just want to say thank you, and see you tomorrow.